Today we will talk about Buddha, a story to reflect and learn. What would you do if you lived in a place where suffering did not exist? Imagine having a perfect life, mansions, banquets, fine clothes, and everything you could ever want. This was the life of Siddhartha Gautama, a young prince born into a kingdom full of luxuries and comforts. Everything was carefully designed so that he would never see or feel anything negative. But is it possible to live isolated from reality forever? In this video, we will tell you a summary of the fascinating story of Siddhartha, better known as Buddha. It will be an extraordinary journey with moments of reflection and learning. Prepare your mind and your heart, because this is not just a historical narrative, it is a life lesson that impacts to this day. Today we present, Who was Buddha? A story to reflect and learn. Siddhartha was born into a kingdom where nothing bad could happen. His father, the king, received a prophecy on the day of his birth. This child will be a great leader, but he will have two possible destinies. Either he will become a powerful ruler, or he will renounce the world and be a great spiritual teacher. Alarmed by the thought of losing his son, the king made a drastic decision. He would never allow Siddhartha to see suffering. From his childhood to his youth, Siddhartha lived surrounded by gardens, music, and happy people. He was a perfect prince, or maybe not. Although he had everything anyone could wish for, there was something that bothered him. It was a feeling, as if something was missing in his life. Why did happiness feel incomplete despite having everything? One day, Siddhartha decided to leave the walls of his palace. He convinced his coachman to take him to see what the real world was like. What he saw changed his life forever. First, he saw an old man bent over with age. "What is happening to this person?" he asked. The coachman explained that this was the natural process of aging. Siddhartha, who had only known youth and vitality, was shocked. On his next outing, he saw a sick man. He was trembling and suffering. "Is this also part of life?" he asked again. His coachman sadly replied that it was. The third time, Siddhartha attended a funeral. It was the first time he had seen a lifeless body. He understood that in the end, everyone dies. It was an overwhelming revelation. Finally, on his fourth outing, he saw a monk. Although this monk had no material possessions, he seemed calm and at peace with himself. Siddhartha was intrigued. How is it possible to be at peace in a world where everyone suffers? In those four encounters, Siddhartha understood that life was full of suffering, but he also realized that there might be a way to overcome it. That very night, Siddhartha made a decision that would change his life. He said goodbye to his wife and son and left the palace. This may seem like an extreme act, but for Siddhartha it was necessary. He wanted to discover the answers to the questions that tormented him. Why do we suffer? Is there a way to end suffering? He began his journey as a spiritual seeker, leaving behind all the comforts he knew. He sought out the best teachers of his time and spent years learning meditation and austerity techniques. He even pushed his body to the limit with prolonged fasts, living with the bare minimum. But the more he practiced these extreme disciplines, the more he realized that this was not the way. So after years of effort, he made a radical decision. He would not follow the methods of others. He was determined to find the truth for himself. Siddhartha sat under a Bodhi tree and vowed not to get up until he found the answer. For days he meditated deeply while facing his own doubts, fears, and inner temptations, symbolically represented as Mara, the Lord of Illusion. Mara tried to distract him in many ways, images of fear, pleasure, and other temptations, but Siddhartha remained steadfast. Finally, one quiet night, everything changed. Siddhartha attained enlightenment. He understood the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is part of life. Suffering has a cause, which is desire and attachment. It is possible to free yourself from suffering. There is a path known as the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the cessation of suffering. With this profound realization, Siddhartha ceased to be a seeker. He had become Buddha, the enlightened one. Buddha didn't keep his wisdom to himself, or if he were alive today, he wouldn't sell you the online course. Instead, he dedicated the rest of his life to sharing his teachings with anyone who would listen. He explained that the key to living a full life is to find balance, neither extreme indulgence nor unnecessary suffering, but a middle path between both extremes. His teachings are practical and universal. Learning to let go of attachment to things we can't control. Live in an ethical and compassionate way. Practice mindfulness to be present in every moment. Even though these lessons are thousands of years old, it's still amazing how relevant they are today. How many times do we feel unhappy because we want more than we already have? How many times do we cling to the past or fret about the future? Buddha offers us an alternative to detach ourselves from the noise and find peace and simplicity. Pause for a moment and think, if Buddha lived in our time, how would he react to modern problems? Would he have social media? Probably not. Imagine Buddha facing the stress of traffic or drama on social media because someone left his message unseen. He would almost certainly say something like, "The real problem is not traffic, but how you react to it," or "Happiness does not depend on a double blue check." This touch of humor is not meant to trivialize his message, but to remind us that Buddha's teachings are incredibly useful if we adapt them to our current lives. If he could find peace in a world full of challenges, so can we. The story of Buddha leaves us with several fundamental lessons. Nothing external will give us lasting happiness. Neither extreme luxury nor absolute deprivation is the answer. True fulfillment comes from within, by accepting life as it is and learning to let go of the unnecessary. We all have the ability to grow, change, and find peace no matter the circumstances. Buddha was not a divine being. He was a human being like you and me. His story reminds us that the potential to overcome suffering lies within each of us. In closing, think about this. You too have a seed of enlightenment within you. Sure, life is complicated and sometimes messy, but that doesn't mean you can't find moments of peace and clarity. The key is to look inward, reflect, and reduce the noise that distracts us. You don't need to sit under a Bodhi tree to discover profound truths. All it takes is small steps, simplifying your expectations, being present, and remembering that you are stronger than you think. So what are you waiting for? Dare to reflect, let go, and live a lighter life. After all, if a rich prince could leave everything behind to seek peace, surely you can find a moment to reconnect with yourself. Life is a wonderful opportunity to grow and discover yourself. Who would have thought that Buddha's story would be so relevant and so interesting to ignore? The search for inner peace is a personal journey. Each step, no matter how small, brings you closer to your true self and well-being. True freedom comes from our ability to choose how we respond to life, cultivating compassion, love, and acceptance along our path. The quest for a fulfilling life begins with self-acceptance and self-love, creating space for serenity and growth. Every day is a new opportunity to cultivate your inner peace, embracing each experience as a lesson on the path to self-discovery. Transform your life. Discover a journey of self-improvement, spiritual growth, and motivation.